everybody. Welcome to this episode of Data Insight. We are on Data Cloud 9 today, and we're going to be talking about how to prepare your org for Salesforce Data Cloud. I am your normal host, Olivia Hinkle. I am the Director of Product Marketing here at Validity. We are the makers of Demand Tools, GridBuddy Connect, Everest, among other things, and also a certified Salesforce admin and just a big lover of Salesforce data and understanding how it works. So we get a lot of questions at different trade shows we go to, the World Tours, Dreamforce, and there was some things around Data Cloud that were like, we keep getting these questions, so we wanted to clear them up. So that was the goal for today. All right, so on the agenda, just a few things. We're going to do a quick Data Cloud overview. So we've all seen that graphic of it before, so we're going to walk through that a little bit. Then we're going to play a little game. We're going to play Fact or Myth Data Cloud Edition. And if you've ever been to a Data Insight, you know we love our polls. So there's going to be polls involved. And then I'm going to give you some tips for data preparation for Data Cloud and then also some resources. So these are things that I found myself going back to time and time again, just as I tried to understand and digest everything that was happening in Data Cloud and what I needed to do to be prepared for my org to actually get ready for Data Cloud 2. All right, let's dive into the goods and start with the graphic that is not showing yet. But again, it's going to be the full graphic once we get through it. I'm just going to kind of chunk it up into pieces for you. So the first thing when we're talking about Data Cloud is it's pulling in all this information from all these other systems that you have, right? So if you look at those orange icons on the left, you've got Loyalty Cloud and MuleSoft and Salesforce and ERP systems. And then once we decide what systems we're going to connect to Data Cloud, we have to decide, are we going to batch that information in or stream it into Data Cloud? Hasn't actually gotten there yet. So the next step is preparing your data. So we have to transform and govern the data in order to get it into the Salesforce Data Cloud model and make it actionable by AI and things that happen with our next best action and things like that later on in the process. And the one thing I want to point out here is notice that the transform icon is what I would call a square peg going into a round hole. So we're going to talk more about this in the next few slides, but just to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about. And then once you prepare the data and get it fit for the ingestion into Data Cloud, then we have to harmonize it. So then we put it into all the different tables that Data Cloud wants our data in. And once it's there, unification starts. And that's when we say, okay, this piece of information about Olivia in Salesforce from our ERP system, from our web traffic information, we're going to unify that into one golden record that we can use to then, let's go to the next piece. That's when we can then action on this. We can analyze that data. We can predict the behavior of our contacts in that information. We can start personalizing experiences. So all this stuff on the right happens after all this setup on the left. So I just wanted you guys to understand a little bit about the prep for Data Cloud. It's when we talk about it or hear about it at different events, it's very much, this is what Data Cloud is going to do for you. This is what it's going to deliver. And that's exactly what we should be hearing. But there's also this whole thing that's going on before you are what I would call Data Cloud ready. So let's go ahead and move on to play our game. Data Cloud, fact or myth. First one, this is kind of an easy one, but Data Cloud, this poll is going to pop up for you. So Data Cloud can be connected to a sandbox. Is this a fact or a myth? I'm just going to give you guys a second to answer that. And yeah, Jules did also put in the chat that you guys can feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. We're going to get to that at the end. Just want to give you guys a second to engage with this poll. And of course, this will be recorded and sent to you. All right, so the results are in, and we've got 78% of us saying that it is a fact that it can be connected to a sandbox and 22% saying that it's a myth. This, my friends, in fact, is a myth. Data Cloud cannot be connected with a sandbox. When you are in Data Cloud, you are in go mode. This is not a time for testing. This is it taking real-time information and giving real-time action to take off that information. So that was a fun one to do. And I was sort of surprised because that is like a Salesforce mainstay, right? Like you test stuff in your sandbox, but the testing here is going to be a little bit different than I think what we're used to before when we try stuff in our sandbox and then deploy it to production. So just keep that in mind. All right, next one. We're going to go a little bit more in depth here, but this is the next poll question for you. So factor myth, Data Cloud Transform will standardize and apply mass changes to your Salesforce CRM data. And again, I'm going to give you guys just a minute, and we're going to dig into some meat on this one. The sandbox one was just sort of interesting. Based on conversations again that we've heard, it wasn't clear that everybody knew that. Right? I have responses rolling in, so I'm just going to hang out here for just a second. All right, let's go ahead and end this poll. So we have 31% of you saying that this is a fact and 69% of you saying this is a myth. And drum roll, please. It is, in fact, a myth. Data Cloud Transform does not standardize and apply mass changes to records, meaning companies still need to manage and update their Salesforce data regularly. But we can totally understand why this was misunderstood, because you're going to hear terms like transform, standardize, normalize, and it all sort of gets confused. So it has to be talked about in the proper context of when we're talking about transform. So transform in Data Cloud, this is aimed at, and I'll just bring this up here, to transform your data from one data set to be compatible with another data model. So we're talking about data modeling here and transforming the data model that you have in Salesforce to be compatible with the data model that sits under Data Cloud, which is that 360 Salesforce data model. And this has been around, right? So this has happened a little bit when we were talking about this particular product. Data Cloud is like Salesforce CDP or all the other brandings that it has gone through. So this isn't new, but understanding how to transform the data into Data Cloud, I think, has been confusing people. So the reason that we have this one standard data model, right? Because you got to think about it. We're pulling in information from Salesforce, ERP systems, from web traffic engagement, and it's all going to have its own setup, its own fields, its own way of, delivering that information to you. But if we want to get to that unified profile, we have to put all of that information into a particular data model that makes sense for the brain of Data Cloud to read and work with. So the Customer 360 data model is meant to reduce the complexities of integrating all of this information into one spot and giving those standard guidelines. So again, sort of talking about standardization here as well, but it is transforming it from denormalized data to normalized data. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So you have to normalize your data to fit the Customer 360 data model. So this is going to be a good time for you to sit down, assess the field level data that you have, and establish how you're going to transform it and map it to get into Data Cloud accurately. So for those of us who haven't seen this isn't one of the resources I'm going to give you at the end. But this is what denormalized data looks like. So it's that spreadsheet view that we're used to, the one that we see sort of inside of Salesforce when we export information. It's got rows that contain relational data. So you've got one row for Dara at the top, and it's got her phone number, her mobile phone, her work phone, her first name, last name, all the information about her right there. And this is done because it helps data retrieval to be faster, okay? But now putting it into Data Cloud, we sort of have to denormalize it and put it into a different layout. And so denormalized or normalized data, is taken into different tables. And this is to establish, it has established relationships with all this other information, but this is to reduce that redundancy. So again, you're going to have an Olivia in Salesforce and your web traffic and your ERP system, all these other places where you're engaging with me. And instead of having it look like here on the left, we've got to take this information and make it look like what it is on the right. So you still have your contact ID, your first name, last name, but then it gets parsed out into, your phone information and your email information. And there's also another ID that goes with that. And that's how we get to that unified profile. Okay, so when you see, let's see, DMO, I think is how it is abbreviated in some of the Salesforce documents. That's for the data model object. And that's kind of what this is referring to is how are we going to transform our data that we have now in all these other systems to fit that data model? It's not saying how are we going to standardize our state fields or how are we going to standardize our countries or, proper case name fields, things like that, where it may be similar in function. So you can do things like concatenating fields together to make it fit into the data model. You can use formulas to format the data to be acceptable to what we need in Data Cloud, but it is not the same as what we're doing to standardize and mass change and update the data that we have inside of Salesforce. because we still have to maintain that source data so Data Cloud can use it accurately. So the takeaway here is that the data in your source systems should be standardized and updated to meet business requirements regularly. Whenever these changes happen, Data Cloud is not going to take on that onus for you. We are still responsible for the source data that is ingested by Data Cloud to give us those insights and analytics that we are looking for to help our, engagements with our customers and prospects. So unfortunately, the data management side of this is not going anywhere. It's actually becoming way more important that we have a standard, because once you have a standard that's sitting inside your source system, let's say you have to change it to go into Data Cloud, it becomes really simple because it's one standard going to another rather than all these different variations trying to go into a standard. So if standardization, mass changing, mass modification, things like that didn't seem important before, we can see how it is becoming even more important as technology and advancements progress in technology. All right, let's go to another poll question. So Data Cloud merges duplicates in your Salesforce data. Is this a fact or a myth? I love watching this stuff come in because it's like some people are saying facts, some people saying myth, and at first it was like fact was really high, and now the myth is sort of catching up. So I'm going to give you guys a couple more seconds to engage with that. It looks like you guys are catching on though. All right, let's go ahead and we'll end this poll. Let's take a look. So Data Cloud merges duplicates in your Salesforce data. That, my friends, is a myth. So much like it being a myth that it's going to transform your data, you still are responsible for your source data. That includes standardizing, mass changing, updating, deduplicating, being a really big part of this. So let's see, we had 31% of you, sorry, say this was a fact, and 69% of you saying this was a myth. All right, but this is a question we get a lot. People will come up to us, they're like, ooh, this with Data Cloud, are people still going to use demand tools? And we were like, yeah, absolutely. Isn't this great? It really underlines the need to take care of our data and to have a tool that can scale and do it quickly and accurately and give you all the different functionality and options to combine your data accurately. So when it's ingested by Data Cloud, it can be accurate and used and give those really true insights that you can then use to create better relationships. So from our perspective, this is a good thing because as these technology advance, like I said, we're putting more of a light on data and its quality and the need to manage it and make this just part of the fabric of your business. No business goes out there and doesn't have a sales team, right? So no business should go out there and not have clean data or not at least have a plan to manage it. But those were the top three things that we were hearing, right? People saying it's going to do all this stuff, it's going to transform it, it's going to clean it. What's going to happen to demand tools? And demand tools is going to be right there, just getting that data ready for you, which I think is great. So let's talk a little bit about where this gets confused. So it's when we start talking about terms like identity resolution versus deduplication. And just to be clear, they're not the same. They're not synonyms. Identity resolution, that's the process basically of it's taking all those different pieces, points, all that information about somebody, and it's saying, okay, this Olivia over here is actually the same as this one over here, and it's the same as this one over here, and we're going to unify that into one profile, and that's that golden profile that we're going to give you to action on, where you can get all that insight from. But it is not deduplicating it. So deduplication, that's where we eliminate redundant data, so duplicate records, and then we combine it down merge it down into a master record. So that's that one single source of truth for that person in that system. So this is a difference between what we do in our source systems and then what happens inside of Data Cloud. And Data Cloud is not going to connect back out to all these source systems and clean up that data. The other important thing here is that if you think about that graph that image that we saw in the beginning, identity resolution happens after data from multiple sources is ingested into Data Cloud. So this is not, again, just trying to drive this point home. It is not working on the source data to clean it up. It's using the source data to then make the connections from multiple different systems. And just pointing out here that deduplication is what you execute on your source data. This is where you clean it up, you get rid of those duplicates, so you know that you are pushing in clean, accurate data, not only to Data Cloud, but to your reports, to everything else that's running off of Salesforce information. Okay. The other thing to note here is that that unified profile is not going to be written back to Salesforce. It's going to stay in Data Cloud. So you don't have that information being transmitted back to the source systems. So again, the takeaway here is that deduplication of source data is a foundational step in the process of being able to use any advanced technology like AI or Data Cloud. The old adage, right? Garbage in, garbage out. You don't want to flood Data Cloud with garbage. You want to make sure that you're putting pristine, clean, well-managed data into Data Cloud so you get clean, pristine, and accurate ways to engage with the audience better. But the thing is, I mean, we could come here and we could talk about this all day, right? And I work for Validity. I am a big, huge fan of demand tools. I was one of its first users ever. I stand by what it does as an admin. I think it is just a great tool to enable people. So don't take my word for it. Let's see what other industry leaders are saying about this. So coming straight from Mr. Benioff himself, I really like this quote for a couple reasons. So one, he's saying the reality is every company will undergo an AI transformation to increase productivity, drive efficiency, deliver incredible customer and employee experiences. So rarely when he says stuff like this is he wrong. And I do believe that this is going to be something we just have to adapt to as organizations. We have to get behind the idea that our data is going to be our competitive differentiator in so many ways. So it's going to help us accelerate by using more advanced technology. It's going to help us personalize by making sure that the information that we have is clean and accurate. And it's not just about the external factors here of your customers. You also have to look internally at your employees. And I really love that he put this piece in that quote, because a couple of years ago, we were doing a study on the state of CRM data health. And I was like, I bet, maybe just because I shared this sentiment, but I bet there are other people out there that would say, I will leave my position if the tools I am given, so your Salesforce data, your CRM data, is not in good shape, is not clean, is not useful for me and slows me down rather than speeds me up. And I believe globally, there was like 64% of respondents that said, yeah, if there's not more being done for a robust data quality solution in my CRM, I will be forced to go somewhere else because I want to be given tools that enable me, not just enable, a connection with a customer, but make me feel like I'm being successful in the initiatives and the goals that I'm trying to achieve. So I really like that he pointed that out, that this is not just externally facing. This is becoming, again, the fabric of who you are as an organization and what you offer somebody when they come to be a part of that organization. This one was pulled straight from the press release that was last year at Dreamforce, where they announced the Einstein One platform and free data cloud for everybody. So Parker Harris said, a company's AI strategy is only as good as its data strategy. So they are not separating the two. In fact, you can't. But again, when they're talking about all the stuff that Data Cloud does, they're really highlighting the engagement and activation of that information. And rightfully so, because again, that's what we want to do. That's where we want to go. But you have to know where you are to get to where you want to go. And that rests in your data and what's happening there. And just one thing to point out here, 87% of these digital transformations like AI, they fail, not because the technology isn't there for us to get out of it what we want. It's just our preparation beforehand is not up to snuff. We're not doing the right stuff. And I think there's a couple reasons why, and I'll share that with you in a minute, but let's just look at this next quote here. This one I really like just because I think it was said very succinctly and clearly that your successful digital transformation is going to hinge less on how you use digital, so that outcome stuff at the end of that graphic, and more on how you become digital. So more of the left-hand side of that graphic. What are you doing? How are you planning? How are you analyzing where you are now to get to where you want Data Cloud to take you? And this part of the process, and we talked about this, I had a conversation with Zachary Lisinski from Elements.cloud. It's actually one of the resources I'm going to give to you that you can go and watch. And one of the reasons this is happening is we don't have the right soft skills leading these transformations, and we're not taking the time to look at our data, analyze it, profile it, really understand where we're at, clean it up, because it feels very idle when we want to see these big outcomes that Data Cloud is promising, doing all this prep work that nobody's really seeing. There's nothing really to show for it other than, I'm getting my house in order here in order to move on. It feels really idle and like you're not being productive. So I can understand the tendency to want to speed through that, but that is where you really have to be focused and methodical on what you're going to do, because all of that is what creates those outputs, that outcome of what Data Cloud is going to give to you in Einstein. So uh, I can't stress this enough that having a proper data management strategy in place, and if you don't have one, sitting down with stakeholders and talking about it is so pivotal to your success, not only with AI, but just as a business. Data it's got the answers, and we need to keep that clean and maintained and nurtured like we would anything else inside our organization. All right. So again, another proof point for you. I was going through, and this is also in your resources, but I was looking through this, and it's the very last point in this Salesforce official Data Cloud checklist and considerations. But they're like, analyze your current data. What does it look like? Take the data quality trailhead. How many duplicates do you have? So it says it right there. It's prompting you to say, like, these are problem areas that you need to go look at that are going to affect and does affect everybody in the Salesforce ecosystem. So it's subtle, they're telling you about it, but really we have to be up to speed on what it takes to clean up our data, manage it, and really do that at scale, not just on project-based reasons, right? This has to be a daily part of our to-do list. It can't just be like, oh, we're doing this project now with the data, so we're gonna, make sure the data is cleaned up. Because your sales team, your service team, your marketing team, they're doing projects every day using that data. This is our enablement tool to go out there and reach the market and get in front of people effectively. So we have to realize that this is a proper care and feeding of our database every day, because teams rely on this every day as their tool to be successful. All right, so I do want to give you some data preparation tips, and we talk about this a lot at Data Insight, so I'm not going to dive too deep on these, but I do give you a resource that does do some more deeper diving on this. And if you ever have questions, you can always reach out to us. Hit me up on LinkedIn. My email is pretty easy. It's olivia.hinkle@validity.com. We are always happy to talk about data stuff with anybody out there because, true to the Salesforce Ohana, we want to give you information that you can take back and consider and action on to make you more successful, right? We want to share what we know with the rest of you so we can all see the same amount of success from this Ohana that we're part of. All right, so first thing, profiling your data. So I said it before, and this rings true here too. You have to look at your data where it is now, understand its fail points, its great points, and just get a full view of it, because before you can get to Data Cloud success or be Data Cloud ready, you have to know where you are, or else what's the path to get to where you want to go? Standardization. Again, we talked about this with the transform stuff. You just have to keep your data in a standard. And if you think about the standard data model, right? It's a little bit different play on words. So standardization of field values, standardization of a data model, but you see the theme going through here, right? It's all easier if we have a standard in place to work off of, because data can get a little bit wild. Everybody enters it in differently. Like I said, other systems, organize it differently. So to have a standard in place is really key, especially for those pivotal pieces of information. All right, deduplication. I think I banged this drum enough, but you do have to manage these duplicates. They will crop up on you. Whether it's because people are importing stuff, end user entering things, data changes over time. They will just be there, killing your database if you don't get rid of them. In verification and enrichment, and this one's a little different for me, because when I think about this, where I focus, especially as a marketer, is how am I going to create a relationship? Where do I need to focus my verification and enrichment to ensure that I am engaging people and giving them the helpful information that I want to give them? So for me, that's emails, phone numbers, physical addresses, the contact points of information. So if you're like, where do I start with this? That sounds like a lot. Data enrichment is kind of a big thing. Start with the table stakes. Start with email addresses. It's so easy. It's pennies on the dollar to verify these things. And if that keeps communication flowing between your sales team, your marketing team, and your service teams to your customers and prospects, then it is well worth the money invested. All right, automation. The tip here, automate everything you can. Once you vet out your data quality stuff that you want to do for standardization, deduplication, these do not constantly have to be hands-on things. Yes, there will be points in time where you have to do a little hands-on data management. That's just the name of the game. We can't get rid of all of the interaction with our data, nor should we want to. But to automate the things that keep your data on track, in line, and clean, that's pivotal, not only to just scaling and staying up to speed with how quickly data changes and how fast stuff moves, but just for the sanity of your team, right? They don't need to go in there doing these tedious tasks. If they can set it up and forget it and just check on it every once in a while, or in the case of demand tools, you can get some alerts that tell you when things are happening. It just makes the management of this so much more, um, dare I say, manageable. And it just feels less like a beast of burden that it's something you have to do. It's like, great, I can set this up once and I can automate it. So definitely automate what you can, find solutions to help you manage your data that can be automated. And then end user data entry. So this is an area of data quality that I just don't think gets enough airtime. So when I think about data quality, yes, all the other stuff that we've talked about makes sense. Standardization, deduplication, mass changing, mass updating, keeping up to speed, record ownership, all of that stuff. But when we think about data cloud in particular, and let's say you're streaming information in real time and stuff, how quickly is your sales and service team able to put that information into Salesforce? Most studies have found that sales teams or service teams will wait until the end of the week to log notes because it's just a little bit cumbersome inside of Salesforce to put all that stuff in there. You're jumping from screen to screen, and it's tiresome. And they're like, you know what, I'll just set aside a few hours on the last day of the week to do some mindless work and enter in these notes. So the end of the week is when data cloud and when reports and when leadership and everybody else has to wait to get these insights, because the systems that we're giving our teams, they're great. Don't get me wrong. I would never knock Salesforce, but it's built for the business, not necessarily for the end user. So if you see people struggling with entering data accurately or timely or at all, and not just using it in a spreadsheet, you have to start looking at, okay, well, what is the situation that I'm having them work in here? And how is that impacting the bottom line of my data quality and therefore the insights that I can glean from this information? You may be familiar with our product Grid Buddy Connect, and it will take your typical Salesforce view and make it kind of look like a spreadsheet. And sales teams love this. Because it will take, let's say you have an opportunity view. It has all your opportunities that are open that you're working. You can view whatever field you want. Then you can say, well, let me see the account information, just a couple fields maybe that I want, and also my contact information for this opportunity. And it looks like a big grid. So they don't have to jump from screen to screen or tab to tab, entering or editing information. It's all right there for them to edit multiple objects in one view, which is really powerful and really fast. And it helps for the accuracy of the information being put in, because again, they're not inundated with all the fields on the page layout. They can just really hone in on the ones that are meaningful to them. So I'll stop there on that. But end user data entry, just like I said, it's not talked about enough, and how it impacts your data quality and how it should be managed and the way we should enable our people to use these systems quickly, because we're all moving fast these days, sometimes faster than I would like, but we have to keep up, and there are solutions out there to help you do that. All right, I'm looking at my time here. I try to like to keep these around 30 minutes, giving you some good takeaways to go back and think about, but also not take up too much of your day. So I will end here with our resources that we have. So I broke these up by Salesforce help docs, trailheads, and videos that I watch, and then some industry content. So the Salesforce stuff, I really went back to a ton to help understand just what was going on in Data Cloud and why people were asking us the questions that they were asking. And then I dug through some of our stuff too to say, this really gives a nice view on how to manage your data quality, or um, we've got one here from Salesforce Ben, data cloud terms you should know. So just a nice glossary of like, how do I even get started with this? What does all this stuff mean? And then Bill Hare, some of you may have encountered him. He's been in the Salesforce ecosystem for over a decade. And he's been doing some blogging on what's going on with Salesforce too. So I just thought these were very helpful pieces of resources for you guys to have to go back and reference as you ramp up on this like I did. And of course, I mentioned this before, but you can get a free Salesforce data quality assessment. Demand Tools will give that to you in addition to a 14-day trial of the tool. So you can just run it for free and say, okay, show me what my duplicate situation looks like. Show me where there's missing information, where there's missing contact decision support, things like that. So you can just get a baseline for what's going on in your data and really start that profiling exercise without having to do much work. So if you have questions on that too, as you've downloaded the trial, reach out to us. We love to hear about it. There's training sessions you can attend, lots of different resources for you. So we are here to help happily. I think we're within our 30 minutes, so I'm going to just take a couple seconds and see if there's any questions out there. Let me go ahead and pull up this chat. Let's see. Okay, so this is another one we get, and I didn't put this one on here, but will demand tools ever work in Data Cloud? And I don't know, but again, the way demand tools works now is it's very much on the Salesforce source data to ensure that that is clean and that you get it cleaned quickly. Data Cloud is go time. That's how I see it in my head. So there's no room there once it's in Data Cloud to clean it, to manage it, it's got to be ready to go. So you have to do that beforehand. So whether demand tools ever starts working within a component of Data Cloud, I really don't know. But as far as how it works now for cleaning things up, getting rid of duplicates, it will be very different if that were ever, a future state for demand tools. Um, oh, well, thank you. Somebody said this was great information. That's awesome. I'm glad you're getting some help out of it. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions rolling in here, but thank you guys for joining me today. I hope this gave you a little bit of an overview of Data Cloud and just kind of what you have to do to get ready for it, that it's a lot of preparation before you get to the fun, shiny insights. We have to shine a bigger light on the fact that there's a lot of prep that goes on here, and it's all going to circulate around your data. So thanks again for joining me. You guys have a great rest of the afternoon, and we will see you next time on Data Insight.